This is the video lesson for Geometry Section 3.8, Slopes of Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. In this lesson, we're going to relate slope to parallel and perpendicular lines. Slopes of parallel lines, the note here says, if two non-vertical lines are parallel, then their slopes are equal. If the slopes of two distinct non-vertical lines are equal, then the lines are parallel. Any two vertical or horizontal lines are parallel. Okay, so those are some conditionals on parallel lines. Okay, let's look at a problem here. The problem asks, are line L1 and L2 parallel? So what we just learned is they would be parallel if they have the same slope, so let's find their slopes. So line L1, that's in red, so let's write this in red. Remember, the slope is going to be the difference in y's minus the difference in x's. And here, let's call this one x1 and y1. Let's call this x2 and y2. So then we have -4 minus 5. And then x2 is 2 minus -1, so that's 2 plus 1. So this is -9/3, which is -3. That is the slope of line L1. And then let's find the slope of line L2. Let's call this x1, y1, this x2, y2. y2 is -4 minus y1, which is 3. x2 is -1 minus x1, which is -3, which is minus a negative becomes plus. So this is -7/2. -7/2 does not equal -3. So no, they are not parallel. And that's a symbol for parallel. Okay, so try this next one on your own. It says line L3 contains, and it gives 2 points, and line L4 contains points C and D. And it's asking, are they parallel? So use the slope formulas for both, and calculate the slope for both lines and decide if they're parallel or not. Please press pause and check back for the solution after you've tried it yourself. Okay, so hopefully you got to know that these two lines are not parallel, right? One of them is -1/3, and the other is +1/3. So no, those are not equal. Okay, let's see. This next problem says, what is an equation of a line that's parallel to this line here, and that contains a point there, -1, 8. Okay, so remember, what we need for a line is either a slope and intercept or a point and slope. In this case, we have a point, and that point is -1, 8. And so then if we could get the slope, then we can do the point slope form, right? Which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And so we have our x1 and our y1. What we need is a slope. And so to find our slope, it says, what is the equation of line that's parallel to this line? Well, what's the slope of this line? This is in y equals mx plus b form, where m is the slope. So the slope of this line is -3. If our line is parallel to that line, then it has equal slope. So our slope is -3. So then when we plug into the point slope formula, we have y minus 8, since y1 is 8, equals, our slope is -3 times x, and then it's minus -1. So when we minus a negative, we make that a plus. And this is an equation. It does not ask for the equation to be in any other formula. This is an equation because there's an equal sign. You do not have to solve for y and simplify. So this just asks for an equation of a line. This line is parallel to this line because they have the same slope of -3, and it contains this point because it's subtracting -1, and then subtracting 8 from x and subtracting 8 from y. Okay, so try this next one on your own. Pause the video. See if you can find an equation of a line that's parallel to this line and that contains the point -5, 3. So push pause, try this on your own, and then check back for the solution. Okay, hopefully you got y minus 3 equals -0.3 quantity x plus 5, right? Since the slope is -1 and the point is -5, so we subtract -5 and 3 from x, and then subtract 3 from y. So x minus 3 equals negative x plus 5. Okay, so then that was parallel lines. Remember, parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines are a little bit different. They don't have the same slopes, but the product of their slopes is -1. Product of their slopes is -1. So two non-vertical lines are perpendicular. If they're perpendicular, then the product of their slopes is -1. If the slopes of two lines have a product of negative, so the converse of this is true. If they have a product of -1, then the lines are perpendicular. And then any horizontal and vertical line are perpendicular, right? You can't actually multiply the slope of a vertical line since it's undefined. But if you have a vertical line, then perpendicular to that would be a horizontal line. So let's see a problem with this. Problem 3 has two lines, L1 and L2, and asks, are these two lines perpendicular? Well, let's calculate the slope of the red line, L1, and let's calculate the slope of the blue line, L2. We'll multiply them together. If we get -1, they're perpendicular. If we don't, then they are not. So the slope of the red line is going to be -4 minus 2 over 0 minus -4. So -6 over 4. We can reduce that. They both have a 2 in it, so let's divide them both by 2. -3 over 2. Okay, and then the slope of the blue line, x1, y1, x2, y2. Sorry, I didn't do that with the last one. Remember, m is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. My y2 is 3. My y1 is -3, so I'm going to add that. My x2 is 4, and subtract -5, so I add. This is 6 over 9, and that reduces to, we can divide those both by 3, so 2 over 3. So if one of them has a slope of -3 over 2, the other is 2 over 3. If we multiply them together, -3 over 2 times 2 over 3, multiply across, -3 times 2 is -6. 2 times 3 is 6. This is -1. So yes, they are perpendicular, and that's the symbol for perpendicular. Okay, so try the next one on your own. Calculate the slope for line L3, then calculate the line for line L4. It's not the line, the slope. Then multiply the slopes together. If you get -1, they're perpendicular. If you do not, then they are not perpendicular. So push pause and check back after you're done. Okay, hopefully you got that they are not perpendicular, right? The slope of line L3 was -8, and the slope of line L4 was 1/10. When you multiply them together, you do not get -1, so they are not perpendicular. Okay, problem 4. This asks, what is an equation of a line perpendicular to y equals 1/5 x plus 2 that contains a point? So we're going to do this one just like the one we did with the parallel lines one. It's just going to be a little bit slightly harder to figure out the line that's perpendicular, the slope, right? We have a point, and then we need a slope. So the slope here is going to be, well, the slope of this line is 1/5. But we want the slope that's perpendicular to this. So what number... let's call it, I guess it's an m, our new m, a perpendicular line, equals -1. So what number, I'm calling this as our slope. This is the one we're trying to solve for, the slope that's perpendicular to that. That's why I did a little perpendicular symbol. So what can I multiply this by to get -1? Well, right, this is 1/5. This is the same as our, oops, that's a highlighter. This is the same as our slope being divided by 5. Right, so we can just multiply by 5 on both sides. These go to 1, so our slope is -5. You may have also learned in algebra that, right, if we have a slope that's a over b, The slope of the line that's perpendicular to it would be, you just change the sign since, so you change the sign, it's negative if this is positive, and then you take the reciprocal and you flip the fraction. So, right, you flip the fraction and change the sign. So in this case, if we had 1/5, right, we would flip the, this is positive, so let's make our slope negative and then flip it, 5/1 equals -5. So those are both two ways of getting to -5, but our slope is -5, and this is our point. That's my x1 and my y1. Let me change the color here. So then we can plug into our point slope form. Y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. So y minus -4 equals -5 times x minus 15. So we'd just write that as y plus 4 equals -5 times x minus 15. And that is an equation of a line that's perpendicular to this line, and that contains this point. Okay, so try this one on your own. What is an equation of the line perpendicular to y equals -3x minus 5 that contains the point -3, 7? So push pause, try this on your own, and then check back for the solution, and then we'll be done. Okay, hopefully you got y minus 7 equals 1/3 times the quantity x plus 3. Since here the slope would be -3, and to make it a perpendicular slope, right, -3/1, if you flipped them, would be 1/3, and then change the sign to be positive. So since this slope is negative, this one's positive, and it's the reciprocal. And then you just do y minus 7 equals 1/3 x plus 3. And then there is your homework. Enjoy.